Hey, yo, it's me, Pop Stan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Gilbert, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is the Silverline Silver Sunday. You may have noticed that the Roland Mann, our regular host, is not here. He's on vacation. He's gone.
I thought we fired him.
No. You wanted to fire him, but I stood up for Roland. I said we had to keep him.
Oh, okay.
Because he's the main man. That's why MANN is in his name. Right? But he's on Christmas vacation. He's in a town in Arkansas that doesn't even spell the word internet. They don't have all the
I don't think they have.
Yeah, and so he can't be with us. So I'm your guest spot. My name is Tom Mason. You might have seen me popping up on the stream for a while. I'm one of the founders of Malibu Comics, for those who don't know. Also the founding editor of Bervera, creator of Dinosaurs for Hire, and one of the co-founders of the Ultraverse. And joining me today is Mr. Mike Belcher, creator of The Man in the Mask. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
And our other troublemaker is Thomas Florimonte Jr., who is...
Howdy do.
He just came down the chimney.
I know.
Yeah, nice. It feels like I need to order something from you by mail.
I can get it. We got time if you need it by Christmas.
So if I understand it, you're one of the inkers on the new Trump's book that's coming out from Silverline.
That's right. That's the I inked all but the third issue of the series. I believe is what it is. But yes, the first issue.
All right.
It's a beautiful book. Wait till you guys see it. And
Trump's has nothing to do with politics. It's about a playing card universe.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you played. It's a sci-fi. It's kind of sci-fi. It's more of a. It's based off the card game, like if you were doing like spades or hearts or whatever. So you have the one set that's the suite, not the suite. I forgot the whole story about the Trumps thing. It's been a while since I got the first issue.
But it's in the Diamond catalog right now.
It is in the Diamond catalog, and I haven't had a chance to run by the comic shop to go see what page it's on yet. So, but it sure is. And then you can also get it. It's in the online too. You can see it at the Diamond online store.
Right. So people were interested in seeing what Silverline is up to for the holidays. Now is the time.
Yes,
Definitely.
Okay.
I'll look that up so we can tell what page it's on.
And Mike, Man in the Mask, where can people go and see that?
Indie Planet. You can pick up. I've got 4 issues in a graphic novel.
Oh,
sitting
great.
at Indie Planet right now.
Terrific. All right. So now we have a very special guest today because he's going to carry us into the holiday season. So I've known this guy for decades. We first met at a radio station a long time ago when he was the mascot, and I was a housemate of one of the local DJs. Since then, he's worked for the Dream Factory chain of comic book stores years ago. He used to work for Heroes World, which was a comic book distributor. He worked on First Comics for the Classics Illustrated relaunch. He worked as a stand-up comedian. I tried to hire him to take my place in Malibu Comics so I didn't have to work anymore. But he moved to Hollywood. He became a manager for Madonna's production company before branching off to be a manager for his own company. And that's sort of where we find him today, ready to talk about comics, television, books, the writer's strike, how to get an agent or a manager, and his new side venture, which is the Santa Barbara Mint. So we've gambled in Vegas. We've won money and lost money at the Breeders' Cup, and we're also having lunch on the beach later this week. So this is my friend Kevin Cleary. Kevin, come on in.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Kevin, welcome.
Howdy.
Definitely welcome.
So
2 Toms and a mic. You couldn't get a 3rd Tom for me to make it easy?
no, but we decided to go with the all-white male club.
Oh, there you go. Well, it is comics.
It is.
Oh.
It's like 20th century comic book industry all over again.
Yeah. So most everybody wants to hear about comics, and so we'll get to the other stuff shortly. But I got to hear the origin story of Kevin and comics.
How I first became a fan of comics.
Yes, because I think all of us who work sort of in comics, either currently or in the past or on the periphery of the industry, all began as fans. So what's your intro? What's your origin?
Well, it was about 1970, excuse me, and I was about 7 years old, and my mother had a friend of hers who lived next door, and they had 3 kids. The Lerners had 3 kids. Shelley was my babysitter. She was the oldest sister. And then she had 2 younger twin brothers, Michael and Kenny, who were about, I guess, 14 when I was 7 in 1970. And they screwed up their grades one semester. And Mrs. Lerner, God bless her soul, said, well, look, you guys need to focus on your studies, and so I'm going to give all of your comics to little Kevin next door.
No. She's a hero and a villain.
Total villain to them. But like we say here in Hollywood, every villain thinks they're the hero of their own story.
Yeah, of course.
So she was being a hero and putting her kids back on a path to righteous grades, and gave me it was probably like 2 feet by 4 feet, this giant sturdy cardboard box, that old kind of cardboard box that you could get back in the 1960s and 70s, that had about probably 250 or 300 very well-read comic books in them.
Nice.
And this was 1970, and these guys were 14, so it was basically like the last 7 or 8 years of comics since they learned to read. And there were Archie, and there were Charlton TV comics, and there were a lot of Marvel comics, Silver Age Marvel comics, and DC, World's Finest, and Batman, Superman, and Green Arrow, and Green Lantern, and JLA, and all this wonderful stuff. And it was literally put in front of me to immediately just inject into my veins over and over and over again. I just started reading them. I was already a voracious reader at 7. My mom's a school teacher, and she's an avid reader also, and it just kind of fell onto me. And then and I was basically given the entire 1960s Silver Age, the best parts of it all at once. And then I was done. There was a local store in our town, the Norwalk Bookshop, and it was a regular bookstore, but if you went in the back, Mr. Corsillo had a big cardboard box with comic books in plastic bags with price tags on them, and you could buy used comic books back there. And that was also the first place I ever bought an Overstreet comic book price guide.
What I love is that you refer to them as used comics, which nobody ever does.
That's what they were. That's what he called them.
That's what they're called. But it's funny that people from outside the industry would call them used comics as opposed to back issues or collectible comics. Or
I call them that now, but that's what he called them then. And he used the Overstreet price guide to price them, and he was a fairly accurate grader for all intents and purposes, But you'd get a lot of he'd buy a collection and just put them in the back, and if you got it, and his son was one of my mom's students at one point, so I would get told when she'd tell my mom, "Oh, Dad got a new collection," and I'd go down there and hit it as be one of the first people to hit this list. It was literally a box on the floor in the back of a bookstore. It's as shady as you could make it.
Did he smoke a cigar?
No. He was a very nice guy. He kind of looked like Richard Benjamin.
Oh, okay.
Very professional, very great. Great bookstore. I think the bookstore is still there, as a matter of fact, in Norway.
Did he know what he had when he came across some good stuff?
Yeah, he knew. Like he said, he had the Overstreet price guide, and he just kind of went by the price guide at the time. And in 1975, we look at those prices now, and they're just a bargain. Right. You're just like, why didn't I buy 14 Spider-Man #1s? They were only $100 a piece.
I don't. I was talking about this with my friend Dave Obrich a couple days ago. We had a chance to buy some Frank Miller original art before, when Frank Miller was a fan favorite, but wasn't really like the hottest Frank Miller yet. He was still he was on the cusp, and we could have got some stuff fairly cheap. And of course, some of that stuff now goes for $250,000 a page, and so we're just, I wouldn't have had to engage in capitalism at any extent in my life if I just bought like 4 or 5 of those pages or covers or whatever, and just held on to them for the last several years, then just then dumped them out, and then I could just disappear.
Well, it's a good thing we're not in this to get rich. If we were in this to get rich, we'd be selling chocolate-covered bacon in every food court at the mall.
Yeah. Also, I had no real prescient ability about what's going to be collectible and what's not. I just get stuff that I like to read, and just
Oh, I always used to tell people everything is going to be worth more someday. The secret is waiting the 25 years and remembering where the hell you put it.
Right. Yes, and you want to not outlive the other collectors.
That's right. There was a great Calvin and Hobbes strip once where he was buying 3 copies of Stupendous Man #1. And Hobbes asks him, well, why are you buying 3 copies? He says, well, because I have 1 to read, and then I got these other 2 I'm going to sell later on when I get rich.
Right.
And Hobbes asks him, he says, well, if you and all the other kids are doing the same thing, aren't there going to be a lot of copies of Stupendous Man #1 out there that won't be worth anything? And he tells his favorite tiger, he goes, we're all counting on each other's moms to throw them out.
Yes. Well, and precedent would prove that to be correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So look at Mrs. Lerner. That's a callback. There you go.
All right. So from there, how do you go to getting into the industry?
Actually, probably most of it starts. I did stand-up comedy in the '80s, throughout most of the '80s.
Right.
If you're old enough, you might have seen me performing at your local college Rathskeller or any sort of comedy club between Boston and Chicago, between like 1982 and 1990. And then when the comedy market started kind of dying, and you couldn't just be a pirate and travel around and make a lot of money for working just 3 days a week. Right. The market settled off. In the 90s, then I was looking for something else to do, and wound up at Heroes World Distribution, which was one of the big 3 distributors at the time. And I had known, I'd kind of hung out at the Fantagraphics office with Tom and Duo and a bunch of other people back in the 80s, as a fan and things like that, and had been around the edges of the industry. And because of that knowledge, they said, "Oh, wait, great, come work with us. You know a lot of people. You seem to understand the business and everything like that." And I did that. I joined them just about the time that they killed Superman in 1992 or something like that. That was literally like my first month on the job was the start of that boom. That was.
And how many copies of that book do you have?
Oh, I have none.
I think I've got a couple.
I might have one copy that I read.
The ones that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
They'll be worth almost cover price by now.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
The original, the first prints are, they've got some value, but there were, as I recall, I remember taking orders. I was actually the purchasing manager of the company at the time, and we had, I think there were at least 9 prints of that particular comic book, The Death of Superman, and
really?
And then everybody bet it all on the return thing, the Return of Superman comic book, which was way over ordered, and the Death of Superman really benefited from mainstream media publicity. It was a slow news day, and everybody was talking about those white bag copies are they're a penny a piece probably.
I remember being at a shop when the news people came by to interview our local shop guy. Comic shop about the book.
So
that was pretty.
The Death of Superman. There was another comic book, a really obscure indie comic book about Bill Clinton and I forget the name of one of the women that he had an affair. Jennifer Flowers. That's it. One of Bill's many dalliances. And there was
book, I think.
There was publicity about that book too that sent this little indie black and white thing because it was the president and one of his girlfriends sort of things. And we just had that one exploded also at Heroes World and I was there for Rye 9 and helped destroy the industry when that book came out and. So there you go. And then I went and worked for the Dream Factory, and where we had a distributorship. We also had First Comics and the Classic Illustrated line that we relaunched into the Walmart. We had a great deal with Walmart that we set up so that we could put the kid-friendly comic books in a mainstream retail environment for the first time, and then. I worked at TV Comics. I actually wrote some of my favorite issue of the Munsters #4. There you go. That's one of mine.
That's the Herman variant.
Yeah, we did the Munsters and VIP, and it turns out if you put Pam Anderson's in a bikini or a swimsuit on the cover of a comic book, you sell a lot of copies. So
I think most Kickstarter publishers are figuring that out now too.
Oh yeah.
So do you think? Because a number of the different career paths, the career path that you've chosen involves a lot of talking to people or salesmanship or presenting yourself or pitching yourself. Do you think being a stand-up comic helped get you into those positions and be successful at them?
I think it's helped me, and it basically laid the foundation for me. One, I had worked in high school. I had worked at an art rep movie theater. And I'd started as an usher, but worked my way up quickly to projectionist. And it was a theater where we changed movies twice a week. We had a double feature every 3 or 4 days, and it was foreign films, American Independence. We did Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight on the weekends, stuff like that. And I just saw a ton of movies. And I had been a voracious reader, not just of comic books, but of books and bestsellers and all sorts of things, mystery, you name it. I read the classics, I read mysteries, I read Tom Clancy, all sorts of stuff. And having that experience as a user, a user experience as a reader, really set me up for the transition into the comic book world where we were telling stories with like Mr. Magoo and the Munsters and things like that. And that was really, and it was the work that we did with those people that really opened the door for me in Hollywood.
So, and I tried to hire you to take my place so I didn't have to work very much anymore.
I know. I wish you'd offered me more money.
I know.
I wish I had a wife at the time that was willing to move to California, but I did not.
Right. And so, but you ended up coming to California anyway. And how did you get hooked in with what was your first thing? Because the first thing I remember you having is the deal with Madonna's production company, because those are the offices that I met you at, or we would have lunch there.
After TV Comics, I worked for Reed Elsevier and a big trade show company, working on the Book Expo and the Variety Showbiz Expo, a big trade show in Hollywood with Variety Magazine as a sponsor of it. And because of that, I made a lot of contacts in Hollywood. They all wanted to hire me, and I showed up out in Hollywood and actually wound up being offered a job as an agent, as a literary agent with an agency called Acme Talent and Literary on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I took that job. I actually got offered that by I always say everything that you do sets you up for the things that you're going to do next. You know what I mean? Right. And I actually showed up in Hollywood to help with a wireless entertainment quick little executive conference while I was getting my feet settled, and ran into an old friend of mine from the 80s, from the comedy world, who worked for my booking agent. And he was one of the guys who organized all the bookings and stuff like that. And he had turned into a filmmaker out here in Hollywood and had made a bunch of short comedy films for Playboy and some other cable networks that he owned and had the rights to. And at the time, this was probably this is like 2000. So the internet boom, the first internet 0.1 is booming everywhere. And I knew some people at Kersey Werner Productions, which was a big company that did shows like Third Rock from the Sun and Home Improvement, a whole bunch of TV shows. They were the Norman Lear of the late 90s, early 2000s, and they did Friends, I think, right? Yeah. So I think people have heard of that one. So I bring him into them because they're looking for content for their internet site that they're starting, and basically help facilitate a deal between my buddy and Kersey Werner. And this is one of those Hollywood things, you know. He was dating an agent, and he had an agent, and he told both of them about what I had done. and they both called me up and tried to hire me. And his agent was a solo agent who worked in a law firm for that legal protection of being an agent, fiduciary job. And the other agency was this mid-level agency that had multiple. They had a commercial division. They represented actors and talent and writers and all sorts of stuff. And I said, I'll probably learn more at this bigger agency. And I went with the agent he was dating that he had told about. So that's where I got my first job as a literary agent at Acme Talent and Literary, and they just made me an agent. They didn't even I didn't have to work on anybody's desk or start in the mailroom or anything like that. And I was about 35 years old. Because
there's no agent school that you go to, really.
There isn't. No, there isn't. It's about doing deals, you know? So then I called up like some book authors that I knew and some comic book buddies that I knew and stuff like that. And I said, hey, I'm an agent. You want me to sell your stuff in Hollywood? And there you go. You know?
Hey, I'm an agent.
And about six months later, I was fortunate. I had there was a man named Mickey Freiberg, who was the head of the literary division at the agency that I was now employed at. And he and I hit it off very well, but he was this old school. He had been an MCA agent back in the 60s. You know, he'd represented talent. He'd put movies together. He sold the TV show Frasier, you know, from an agent packaging point of view. That was a big payday and stuff like that. All this sort of big stuff. And he took me under his wing and taught me a bunch of stuff, to the point that I was able to do some things, even though I was operating in a little bit of a unorthodox, un-Hollywood kind of a way. And about 6 months later, I did a deal with Tom Cruise and Paramount Pictures for an 8-book science fiction novel series that made the cover of the Hollywood Reporter. And all of a sudden, I was accepted, and I was part of the Hollywood firmament. And all of a sudden, you know, calls were getting returned, and you know, or even better, I was getting calls out of nowhere, people saying, "Hey, what do you got? Send it over to me," and stuff like that. And that happens that happens again every time you get your deal, your name in the trades again, and stuff like that. So, you become the flavor of the month or the week or the day, and everyone says, hey, don't forget about me. How come you didn't send me that one? And I'm like, well, you guys do kids programming, and this was, a horror film about a serial killer. So I didn't really, you didn't really pop up on the list. I'm sorry I didn't call you for this.
We got a new division. You need to send me this.
That's right.
Don't cut me out next time. Send it all over to me.
And then
Let us look at it. Let us look at it anyway.
Then we left the agency in a way that was very similar to some other, me and a partner left the agency and then went to work for Madonna's company, where we were managers and producers for a few years. And then we went out on our own with a company called Content House. And then I left that company to do some other things. And then I started another company. Actually, a friend of mine from the agency, my current partner, John Beach, had started a company called Gravity Squared. And I had done some writing and work with a writing partner for a couple of years. And then when I was ready to come back to the managing and stuff like that, I joined him at Gravity Squared, which is where I am now.
But back up to the Madonna thing. So what did you do with Madonna?
Well, that was a fun time.
This is going like this way and this way and that way.
Well, there was a big white building. It's called the Crystal Palace. It's a big white building in Beverly Hills. And
it's
Madonna,
near the police station, isn't it?
It's right around the corner from the police station and next to a couple of other places. Right down. Actually, it was right next to Richard Simmons' workout studio also. and I would see him every now and then. We'd walk down the street for lunch at the place around him. And he was a lovely man back then. This was 25 years ago or 20 years ago now. There was Maverick Records on the 4th floor, and there was Maverick Television, film and television. We were on the 3rd floor, and the record guys were the ones who made all the money there.
Right.
I mean, and they never let us forget it, But at the time, we did some things. We got was it Agent Cody Banks was one of our movies that came out back then. Okay. Material Girls with the Duff Sisters and some stuff like that. One of my big things that I was doing while I was there, Madonna wanted to direct her first movie. And I was one of the people, along with a couple of other producers, who were bringing in the material.
You were the one
Madonna
that had to tell her no.
To say no to Madonna. We were bringing in, is this right for you? What do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? We had a book called Floppy Firsts about a young teenage girl's coming of age sexually. Brought that in, and we got that option. We actually thought that was going to be. I thought that was going to be the one.
A great type.
And it's a great book. Actually, it's a great book series that's out there. And unfortunately, it didn't get made. And Madonna, I believe she directed a remake of Swept Away as her directorial debut instead of all of the wonderful original material that we bought. And when you're going to remake a Lena Wertmuller film like Swept Away, which I had projected at that movie theater, the foreign film movie theater that I had back in the 80s. I was like, really? Why don't you just remake Casablanca? It's like one of those, like, why are you doing this?
So I think it's true that a lot of stuff gets optioned.
Yes.
That doesn't actually get made.
That's right.
And so it's not so much, it's whatever it is. It's 900 deals and 100 things get made, or 99 deals and 1 gets made, or something like that. But the percentage is fairly slim for what.
Yeah, I thought it would be a lot.
I would probably think it's not even 1 in 100.
Right.
I was lucky early on in my career. In addition to representing the books and the comic book people, I also have done very well representing the life rights of like real life people and some of the things that they've lived through or done and things like that. And at Acme, we represented the families, the men and the last men and their families of the transit officers, the last people who were rescued under the rubble of 9/11 on that day, and their story. And that became, we optioned that and we sold it as a book and then a movie. I sold it to I had a client, Deborah Hill, who was a writer producer, I also represented some people like John Carpenter and Kurt Russell and Deborah along the way, and their Snake Plissken franchise, which we did a comic book deal for. But we sold the rights to Deborah, and that became the movie World Trade Center, that was directed by Oliver Stone, starring Nicolas Cage. And it's a very powerful movie that I still have not seen 20 years later. So I just don't have the heart to watch it. So.
I recognize the importance of it, but I also know it's going to make me incredibly sad, and I would just.
And it was the first 9/11 project to get sold in the town, when they were all saying, oh, we can't sell them anything 9/11 based and stuff like that. And I was like, well, this is really, this isn't political. This is a story about human triumph over tragedy.
What was the year of that?
Oh, this was 2002. This would be the beginning of 2002 that we sold that project.
So still way too close to.
Oh yeah, it was probably about 4 or 5 months after that tragedy.
You also represented some of the last of the NASA astronauts to walk on the moon, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, we've worked with a bunch of astronauts over the years. As a matter of fact, I was also lucky enough to be a producer on a book called One Giant Leap that we set up 3 different times. And then they made the movie First Man. It was a biography of Neil Armstrong. And then they made the movie First Man and just killed my project. Because it's been done.
But it seems
Catherine Sullivan was one of our clients, one of the first women to walk in space, and she launched the Hubble telescope. We also work with and represent Homer Hickam. If you've seen the movie October Sky,
such a good
movie. That's based on his real life childhood growing up, and we option his other books and stuff like that all the time. He's got some fantastic stories, and he's on the board at Space Camp and on the board of directors for Space Force, and the vice presidents call him for advice all the time. He's probably one of the smartest guys that we know. We also were representing recently a recent real life person that we were representing was a woman named Judy Heumann, who is one of the leading advocates for political disability rights. She's kind of the Martin Luther King of disability rights movement. The Americans with Disability Act and things like that. She worked very hard to get that passed. And we've got her biographical movie set up over at Apple right now. And the woman, Sean Hayter, a fantastic writer and director who recently won the Oscar for the movie Coda that she wrote and directed, also is our filmmaker on that. And that brings us to another point. It helps if you can attach a good star or director or producer with that. We're producing that one with David Permit, who produced Hacksaw Ridge and so many wonderful, fantastic movies, as well as one of my personal favorites, Captain Ron. If you don't love Captain Ron, I don't want to talk.
With Martin Short and Kurt Russell, right?
That's right. That's right. Love that movie.
It sounds like you have a very wide net. You mentioned earlier that you were a voracious reader as a kid. And some of the clients and things that you represent are there's astronauts, there's survivors of disaster, there's the disability rights activists, there's comic book people, there's book people. I mean, that's a really wide range of interests. Does that come from you and just stuff that you're personally interested in and think, oh, this should be a movie? Or do you? I mean, what is it that you see in these things?
Yeah, that's where I was going with the same question. What is? How do you figure out what you want to option? That kind of thing. Is it more specific to what's going on in this moment in time, or what you're predicting is going to be, cool within a couple of years, or is it just whatever you whatever flips your skirt up and you're like, this is really cool. We should jump on this.
It's a little bit of both. One, there are I always when one of my friends gets a new job and goes from one production company to another production company, or a producer leaves one studio and signs a deal excuse me, at another studio. Hang on one second, I've got
what you got? Cool.
For my Batman
tiki.
Oh, Batman.
Yes.
Tiki. Those are cool. I got a couple of them.
Love those. But when they move, the first thing they do, they call us and they say, hey, I need some material for this new place. And I always ask them, I say, what does the studio want from you? Because it's not even what they want to do all the time either.
Yeah.
It's what does the studio want to do? If you've got, and right now,
you just flip through your roller deck and go, I've got this.
Yeah, there's always, I always say I'm really more of a take orders, like a pizza delivery boy or something like that. You're calling me, you're looking for, lately everyone's been kind of searching for the thing to compete with Yellowstone in the TV space.
Oh.
They want a Western, but it needs to have a romance in it, because if you watch Yellowstone, the real driving force of that show, it started out the fact that it was Kevin Costner as the star of it, but the driving force, the driving dynamic of the show is the love story between Beth and Rip, if you've ever seen that show. And that's really what they're looking for. And we're just doing a deal right now this week with Universal for a book of ours that's basically a Western. It's a romance Western, and that's what they're buying.
Because I think people, you and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. The audience for Yellowstone skews female.
That's right, because of that romance relationship of the girl and her finding her cowboy, smart, sassy girl who finds her cowboy.
You would think it would skew male because it's pretty male dominated cast, and it's cowboys and horses and ranching and land rights and stuff like that. You would think it's 60-40 male, but it's not. It's a lot.
Yellowstone is more of a Hallmark kind of a show.
Oh,
Right.
Except for the shootouts and the dead animals. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and the sex.
Yeah,
There you go. And that's not on Hallmark at all.
A little bit of hotter sex than Hallmark, but basically it is to a certain extent. Yeah, girls from the small town moves away to the big city, gets an education, comes back to the small town for work on her dad's ranch, and falls in love with the cowboy who works for her dad. I mean, if that's not a Hallmark movie, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So it sounds like a lot of stuff is basically, you see something that you like and you think would be good for some people, but it's not necessarily good for all your people. It's like, oh, I know 5 people I can send this to or show this to. It's not like I know 100 people I can show this to. It's more like I don't know how, I'm not smart enough to figure out how to say this correctly, but it's not an everybody project. It's target things specifically to people that are in the market for that thing.
There are a lot less everybody submissions nowadays than there used to be when I first started. Now you're really kind of like everybody else. You're niche casting. You're saying, okay, I know what you want in the horror genre, and I'm going to be just getting you the horror stuff and stuff like that.
Right.
But at the same time, there are times when, and I do, and just to previously answer Tom's question before that I really kind of left hanging, I look for things that I love. Okay, I look for things that I love all the time, because the thing that sells stories in Hollywood most is passion and perseverance. You have to have passion for something to keep trying to sell it again and again and again until they make it. God damn it, and you're going to sell it again. I sold that Neil Armstrong project 3 different times, to 3 different studios, and one time to the same network twice. Because I wasn't ever gonna give it up. I've actually optioned we've got a book about the life of Johnny Carson and the history of the Tonight Show, and the three Jack Parr, Steve Allen, and Johnny, and how they each were the king of late night, and eventually Johnny, became the real king. And we've optioned that probably about 2 or 3 times, and that's another one. I'm just going to keep selling it until somebody's going to make the Johnny Carson movie someday. Why not me? Why not my project, right? It might be somebody else's project, but we'll try to get it mine. I had a story about I had a story that I loved about a forger in Europe who was literally one of the best art forgers ever, to the point in the middle of World War II, the guy sells a fake Vermeer that he painted to Hermann Goring for $1.5 million. Okay. He swindled the Nazis, and his name was Hans von Meegren. And I, for 5 years, I tried to sell this story. I had a book that was also, and the family's website and everything, and all the family. Somebody else wound up doing a different book on him, and that got sold and got made in Europe as a feature first, with Guy Pearce, one of my favorite actors in the whole world. So that just made it hurt like double,
So so I know that the people who are listening and people, especially people in comics, are always curious about how how they get a manager, how they get an agent, how they get the comic book that they've created into the hands of the people who can possibly put it on screen or option it for a movie or TV show. What does that look like to a guy sitting in his home studio?
Well, if you are okay, there's a lot to unpack in that question. Right. If you have never written a screenplay before, and you want to write, and you envision yourself as being a writer, and you want to write a screenplay, the first thing you have to do is write a screenplay. Right. And I always like to tell people, if you haven't done anything before and you're just reading, Save the Cat or Sid Field's screenplay and story and all these other books that you can buy, there's plenty of people out there that'll charge you money, like a gold rush, picks and shovels. They'll sell you the picks and shovels for you to go work your claim, without ever really helping you to work the claim.
Right.
If you're going to write something, I always tell people, it helps if you have 3 or 4, maybe even 5 good ideas. Okay. And then what you have to do is you have to sit down and you have to write the first screenplay. And then you go through it and you do a rewrite on it and everything like that. And then what I'm going to tell you to do is throw that sucker out. Okay. Don't show it to anybody, because I'm going to tell you this, it sucks. Okay. Right. You could be Aaron Sorkin, and I guarantee you, your first screenplay sucks. Yes, that's all there is to it. Then take your save your best idea, literally save your best idea for like 3rd or 4th. Okay. Write one of your weaker ideas first, and then work on it and get it right. Find out the formatting that you have to do correctly and things like that. Have a couple of your best friends read it and they'll tell you how much it sucks. Okay. And then you put that one away and then you start to work on your second one, because your second and your third screenplays are going to be geometrically better than your first. And then you need to start entering screenwriting contests. Obviously, the Nichols is probably the preeminent one. The Blue Cat would probably be second. And you have to do really well in those. And you're okay if you make it to the quarterfinals. If you're a quarterfinalist, you're good. You're good if you're a semifinalist. And you're really onto something if you make it as a finalist in one of these contests, okay? And then if you're a finalist or a semifinalist or maybe even a quarterfinalist, people are going to start to notice, okay? There's people who are assistants to people like me, whose job it is to keep an eye on the contest winners and things like that, and look at the lists and then read the log lines and stuff like that. And oh, by the way, you've worked for 2.5 years on your screenplay, and then you're sending it out with a cover letter that says, please read my screenplay. You need to spend a good amount of time writing a log line. And I'm actually going to go back to Tom talking about Trumps at the beginning of the show. Okay, you need to have that.
The explanation of that.
You need to have that log line, that one single sentence that is just boom and falls off the tip of your tongue. And it's for both the email that you're sending out and the quote unquote elevator pitch that, I'm a screenwriter, and somebody says, what's your latest screenplay about? And you tell them, and I always say a good log line has four that's better sided, 4 parts in it. And it can be a long sentence, but you need a hero, you need a dilemma, you need an action, a course of action, and you need a goal. Okay, and the example that I like to use the most is Walter White. When Walter White, a high school chemistry teacher diagnosed with cancer, decides to sell meth in order to, decides to make and sell meth in order to leave some money for his family after he's dead. You've got Walter White, a high school chemistry teacher, diagnosed with cancer is his dilemma. Action is to make and distribute meth, and then of course to have money leave to say that's all for the thing. And then you say at the end, it's called Breaking Bad. And what you want is that perfect sentence, so that if me as a salesman talking to the producer, I say the sentence, I say that logline sentence, their only response is, I should read that. I need to read that. That's right. What you want. And you don't want any other if they have other questions, like if you're at a party or if you're in that proverbial elevator, then you can feel free to discuss it. But they know right away what the hell's in it and what the benefit is and the marketability to a certain extent. It's that perfect sentence that you could get from the TV guide or the cable listings,
So you look
But
at
that's
it.
an important sentence. That's an important sentence. It's just as important, quite frankly, as your entire pilot or screenplay.
All right, so that makes sense if I want to be a writer, but what if I've already made my comic?
Now, then it's about getting it into the hands of the right people. I mean, believe me, there's people that are all over looking for comics at every comic book store, and this is where distribution, the failure of the current comic book distribution, having been a distributor at Heroes World, during the peak comic distributors, I'm surprised comic retailers can figure it out with this current system of distribution that we've got going on right now. And there's no real place for them to, whether it was Cap City or Diamond back in the day, to have one distributor that you just knew they'd be there. Wednesday was New Comic Book Day, and you go. But for getting it to me, I mean, obviously, I'm always willing to look at new comics, just so you know, because I love comic books, and selling them is both a challenge and fun. But it's one of the things I first started selling when I first came out here, because I always loved the format, and quite frankly, it's easy for them to see the movie. It's easier for them to see the movie or the TV show in a comic book than it is for them in a 400 or 500 page nonfiction book about the building of the Hoover Dam, which is another one of the things that I've optioned like 3 times and almost had Leonardo DiCaprio starring in it for Paramount Pictures.
You don't understand. It's a wall. It holds back the water.
That's right. It holds the water. It doesn't fall down.
It's
This
called
one.
Dam.
This one holds.
There's
You know?
bodies buried inside the concrete.
Oh, there's a lot of secrets in that dam. It's a great story. It's a great story.
It's a damn good story.
Yeah, it is.
That's the tagline.
It's a,
But then there's God forbid you actually succeed and we sell your thing to Hollywood. But to finish answering your other question, actually, most of my if I sign a screenwriter, it's usually because someone has recommended him to me or referred them to me. Every now and then we sign somebody from a contest, be it a novel contest or a screenwriting contest. John and I we're always looking for those types of people writing good screenplays out there. I would suggest, if you want to break in right now, trying to write feature film scripts. Television is a business. Television is a business like being an apprentice to a locksmith or something, or a plumber, where you show up and you get a job as a writer's assistant, or and you work as an assistant for several years, and then you finally get a chance to break in as a writer. You get your tryout as a writer, and you work your way up, from staff job to story editor to co-producer to producer to showrunner, and it's literally a hierarchy, like working in a bank. Okay, and but the way to break into that world, if you do want to write for television someday, is to write some good movies and have them sell and get made and maybe even make some money. I think Taylor Sheridan is a perfect example of this for anyone who knows the current marketplace, since we've already talked about Yellowstone. He's the creator of Yellowstone, and he'd written Yellowstone when he was just an actor on the Sons of Anarchy show. And everyone was like, you're just an actor, thanks for the TV pilot, but you're going to... And he said, okay, I'm going to go off and write a couple of movies. And he wrote Sicario and what was it, Hell and High Water. And the next thing you know, Paramount Pictures and Paramount's calling him up, going, "Hey, you still got that Yellowstone script?" And because he's proven himself in the marketplace. Because in Hollywood, nobody wants to be the first, last, or only person to buy anything.
Well, it's like high school. It's easy to get, if you're a guy, it's easy to get a girlfriend if you already have a girlfriend, or it's easy to get a date if someone has already said yes to you.
That's right.
If no one wants to be the first one to say yes to you.
That's right. So it's breaking in is probably the hardest part, but it's really also then about, there's contests that can be won, and building up a network of people that are in the business and can then refer you to the right people. And you'd be surprised how many people I am still getting referred to. They're like, you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, hey, do you know so-and-so famous person? And I'm like, no, I do not. And they're like, oh, let me set you up with them because they should totally see what you got, or they should totally know you, or something like that. And it's been 23 years here, and I'm still getting, referred to people myself. So that's the nature of the business.
So how did you do during the pandemic?
I did a lot of nothing.
No?
I was not... actually, during the pandemic, I thought you meant the writer's strike.
No,
because there were 2 breaks. The pandemic, we were incredibly busy. We were incredibly busy during the pandemic.
I would think so, hustling, trying to make sure that whenever it broke, that you were ready to go, right?
Well, there were a lot of people who were temporarily unemployed by the pandemic, and those were all of the production people, okay?
Yeah.
They shut down production everywhere. The people that still had their jobs and had to keep working were all of the development people. Now, some of the people got laid off at the beginning of the pandemic. These directors of development, vice presidents of development, story editors at these various production companies, the people who are responsible for calling up Kevin and saying, hey, could I see that book? Or taking my call, and when I have a book to pitch, and say, oh, yeah, send that over. Let's take a look. And those people, took a look around, said, oh, they just laid off like a third of my people. And they all said, I better find something to keep my job.
Yeah.
Justify my paycheck. And so we were getting calls left and right and doing deals with people, and people were taking options, and producers were optioning stuff, and the studios were optioning stuff, and the networks were optioning stuff, and all sorts of, because they could have the writers work,
Right.
Writers don't work with people.
We all work from home.
You lock them in a room, you throw in some Cheetos, and you show up in 7 days, you let them out, and they hand you a script.
Cheetos? No, you get Chinese food.
There you go. That too. And pizza.
Chinese.
Yeah. But that part of the business kept chugging along. So I was actually kind of disappointed. I was kind of like, oh, we're going to get a break, because we'd been like busting our asses for, up until the pandemic started. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, man, this would be great. I get to sit home and watch, The Price is Right and stuff like that and everything. And no, that's not what happened. I had to work my ass off. Yeah.
Well, did you see that, all this hard work that you put in? Was there any results from all this stuff? Did you see a bunch of new stuff? Because I guess over the past couple of years, you would think that all of that crunching that you guys did and everybody else did would have resulted in a lot of really great new stuff. But we didn't. It takes years. Great new stuff.
It takes years. I've resigned myself to, I always tell my clients. That first guy I did, Bill Forstchen, I sold his 8-book science fiction series to Tom Cruise and Paramount Pictures, and we got a big amount of money for it and everything like that. And I said, what? Congratulations, Bill. We just sold your stuff to Hollywood, but we did sell it to the guy who bought the Mission Impossible franchise, and in the first movie, turned Mr. Phelps into a Russian traitor and killed him. So I always tell them, clap your hands together like a blackjack dealer in Vegas, leaving their table at the end of their shift. Take the check and go. If they want you to be involved and you want to be involved, if they offer you like producer involvement and to be involved, you can, but all they're going to do is there was a question on Twitter. There was a question on Twitter, screenwriting Twitter, they call it, where they're talking about screenwriting, screenwriters and stuff like that. And there was a post that was shared where somebody had a one script page that was very thick and chunky with a lot of text and stuff like this. And then another one that said, it was just a lot of dialogue, light and easy to read, sort of much easier to read, sort of thing. And they were like, which one of these would you rather read? And I, being, the jerk that I am, of course, I responded and said, which one, has a large enough pre-existing fan base that won't care what Hollywood does to their property when they mess it up completely. That's the one I want to read, So that's, because that's what we do. That's what we do. I mean, you look at a book like The Natural, and they changed the ending. Robert Redford hits a home run, wins the game. He's a hero. He gets Glenn Close as the girl and his son, and they all live happily ever after. Not how the book ended.
Right.
Look it up.
Elmore Leonard used to say something similar to that, which is, I just sell them the books. And then
let them do what they want.
And I keep the books as it is. And if they make a good movie, they make a bad movie. It doesn't affect his books. It doesn't affect his book sales necessarily. But he has a lot less headaches by not getting involved.
I had a client named John Farris, who is one of the masters of horror, who wrote a book called The Fury that was made into a classic movie
Kirk
back
Douglas,
in the 70s. Yep, and I represented him for a good long time, and Farris had a great attitude. He goes, Hollywood has to do what Hollywood has to do. He said, I wrote the book. I know what the story is. I know what my story is, he would say. And Hollywood has to do what they have to do, because he'd always say it, and they always say it in town too. A movie is a movie, a book isn't a movie, a book isn't a movie, and a book is a book. It's that sort of thing.
They are what they are.
That's right.
Yeah. That's why Frank Miller's Spirit movie is such a disappointment, because it's a movie, but it's not the Spirit.
It's not Spirit.
No. So
that's right. Yeah.
All right, so
the Shadow is more of a true representation of Lee Falk's strip than the
Alec Baldwin one.
Than the Alec Baldwin Shadow. It's actually a very true, accurate portrayal, I think, of a comic strip that didn't go over well because it was so true.
Right. Accurate. I think that's also true of the Phantom as well with Billy Zane.
It works both ways, exactly.
Yeah, the Phantom was great.
I think the Phantom is great, and it's a great representation of the
Phantom was Lee Falk, not
Shadow.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And but I think that the audience, the wider audience that is not a Phantom fan, did not connect with that because it was almost too reverential to the source material. But I can't get enough of it. So
I'm with you. I love the Phantom.
Yeah. And I think I thought Billy Zane was going to be a huge star.
I did too.
And I was surprised that he wasn't. And then but I'm often wrong about these things. All right, so then there's the writer's strike now. So what you and I talked a lot during the writer's strike because there was nothing to do.
Yeah, because there really wasn't anything to do. You couldn't cross the strike lines and stuff like that. We did do a couple of deals with a couple of writers who wanted to option some books and material themselves because they could work for themselves, but they couldn't work for any of the struck companies at the time. And that was really about it. I went back to the San Diego Comic-Con, actually, and for the first time in a couple of years. I hadn't been down there since the beginning of the pandemic, and it inspired me to, since I had some time on my hands, it actually inspired me to start yet another new company as a bit of a side hustle, and that's the Santa Barbara Mint, which are these pictures that have been behind me the entire time, and we made some collectible coins, and I've always believed in, and I did this before. I used to have a company back in the day called Quantum Marketing and Quantum Design when I was in the comic book industry. And at Quantum Design, we did some stuff with Rob Liefeld's Awesome Comics. And we did, I still have, here's one of my favorite little pieces from there. We did the Awesome, the Alan Moore Supreme pin. And we did a Fighting American ring with Joe Simon before he passed away. He signed all of our certificates of authenticity and some things like that. And we only did like 500 of the pins and 75 of the rings and stuff like that because I've always believed in truly limited editions. I don't think 10,000 is a true limited edition when you're talking about, some things and stuff like that. So I wanted to do something where I could make something again. Like it's fun having a comic book or a pin or a ring or something in your hands at the end of the day when you're working on things, when these movies and TV shows take forever to get made, if they're going to get made at all. And so that's where the Santa Barbara Mint came out. And our first line of collectible coins is the 100 Acre Wood series, which is based on the original Winnie the Pooh book and the images of E.H. Shepard from the original Winnie the Pooh novel from 1926.
So, but you've always been interested in collectibles and because there's that feel. I think Mike has it. I think Tommy has it. It's like I like the digital stuff too, but there's when you're making things and the box comes and you're holding it in your hand, like that, it feels real. It feels like It's like the scene in Castaway where Tom Hanks makes fire, and he dances around the fire. I made this. Look what I have made. I have made fire. That's sort of how I feel when a box of something that I've made shows up in the mail. It's like I want to dance around it and go, it may never find an audience. It may find a great audience. I may never make a dime off of this. I made a thing, and I'm proud of it. So that's.
And you should be. You should
like
be.
To hold it in the hand.
That's actually one of the things I do like about selling comic books in Hollywood, because they think anything getting made here is a miracle. And so when you drop a comic book or a graphic novel on some executive's desk, they're like, oh, there must be a lot of fans for this thing. They don't know if it only sold 5,000 or 10,000 or 1,000 or 600 copies. They're just holding a physical thing, and they're like, oh, it's a physical thing. We know that going through, that you can get 3 people together and make a comic book, but they get 500 people together to make a movie or something like that. So they think it's a crazy process, but it's not. And we know how easy it is.
Because when you talk about how to make something like a comic book, and you talk about we intuitively or instinctively know now the steps required to make a comic book or to make a thing. It's like, well, you need these elements. You have to put it in this order, and then you have to get files to the printer, and the files have to be a certain way, and then you have to pick out the paper stock. And then you have to ship it to a distributor or to your house or wherever. And, it's a lot. And when you start talking about it, it's almost like alchemy to somebody who doesn't really understand.
Yep.
I
like ours. We're doing ours. Every coin is individually numbered. There are only 300 pieces for each one. And right now we've got a discount code for all of the people here. It'll be in the comments.
I'm trying to get Pops the
he did. It's in
the link up. Yeah.
It's in the comments.
And it'll be in the comments.
Okay, great.
And this discount will be good up until Christmas for anybody who wants to use it. And you can get 10% off the purchase. And we're doing a special up until Christmas where we pay the sales tax, and there's free shipping too. So there you go. And you get 3 coins in the first set, the first 3 coins of this series. There'll be more coins in the series later. And then we've also got some more series that we're going to be doing next year and the year after. So fun stuff.
So you're what?
Maybe we'll do those dinosaur for hire coins soon.
The world is waiting.
No one. We could sell tens of them.
So in the ones, and
well, we could 4 of us. We could at least buy 4.
That's right.
Exactly. I get one.
Well, I think the 4 of us would expect them to be comped, but that's just me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Tom, send me one.
We've talked about this before, Kevin. Is you and I have a thing where we're kind of serial entrepreneurs. That's sort of the way our brain goes, where it
killed my first marriage.
Because you want to make stuff, and
well, literally, we went to a marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor first meeting turns to my wife. We talked for like 20 minutes each and stuff like that, and she goes, you got to understand, he's an entrepreneur. This is a personality type that you're never going to be able to change. Because we walk out of the place, and she goes, she turns to me, she goes, we need to find a different counselor.
Somebody that's
one who agrees with me.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be hard. I think for a number of people, like Mike, if you had a partner who wanted you to stop drawing, could you stop drawing?
Oh heck no!
Right.
I've learned that the hard way. I've tried before. You just can't.
Right.
It is what you are.
It's there. It's in you. It's got to whatever is swirling around in your head has to come out through the hand.
Absolutely.
And
now I've got a partner who's unfortunately almost too encouraging. Every stupid idea I have, she's like, "Oh, you should do something with that. That's a good idea." I'm like, I don't know about that one, but okay, yeah, no. Then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, should I do something with that?" Yeah.
Now the encouraging partner is the better partner.
Oh,
yeah, that's why I've set up my my studio where I do my work. It's in the living room, so I can sit next to my wife while we're watching TV. That's where I work.
Right.
I don't have I've not had a studio in my house or a place to work in my house for 20 years. It's always been in front of the TV with my wife.
You found a way to make that work. Like you have together time, because I don't know if it doesn't really work well with writers, but I think it works.
No, I couldn't do that. Yeah, it's like when I have to do code or whatever, programming and stuff. I can't. Yeah, that's a different part of your brain.
Right.
As far as artwork goes, I can sit in front of the TV and draw all day long.
Because Mike, you work from a script first before you do your own drawing, right? or do you?
Well, I plot it out, but I do it. I kind of meander through it. I draw it, and then I let it kind of naturally progress.
Oh, that's nice. I lay out mine like I have a disease. And then I'm just.
If I was just writing it, I would do that. But
Right.
since I'm also drawing it, I try to kind of add both of them together to make it more creative. So
Right.
as I'm going, I know exactly what the actual comic I'm working on is going to go.
Right.
But page by page, it's just kind of I'm walking the path.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people can have a different creative approach and all achieve, great results with different ways and different paths.
Yep.
I have written several screenplays too. I've been a semifinalist and a quarterfinalist in those contests that I've mentioned before. And so I always tell people, you have to be better than me. That's your first job, is you have to be better than me. And there's plenty of room to be better than me, quite frankly. But my favorite thing is I always write the first half of something. And then, because I don't do the full outline, but I know what the first half is, and then I start, and I know how I want it to end, and then I write the ending, and then I write it backwards until I meet in the middle.
Yeah, because Ross Ritchie at Boom Studios had a similar thing where he said he did a YouTube video on his channel, which said people are always asking me how they can break in at Boom as a writer or whatever they want to be, or they want to write for Boom, they want to do this, they want me to hire them to do this book or that book. And Ross's answer is always, okay, here's the 5 writers that I currently use for freelance work. Who do you want me to fire? Who are you better than? Are you better than James Tynion? I don't think so.
Right.
Are you better than this person? No. So when you get to be better than they are, then we can have a talk. But I'm not going to fire a guy who's already doing a great job just to hire you because you want that job.
Well, you see, now that's where Ross makes a lot of mistakes, because what you want to do is, as good as James is, if you can find someone who's close to James's level of talent, you want to hire them and pay them a lot less than you were paying James.
Well, that's the comic book way.
That's the TV way. That's the TV way too. That's the feature film way too. That's the television way also.
Right. So,
Aaron Sorkin, great. Yeah. You know what? This is yes. No, we're going to hire this nobody to do this.
So we have a special guest before we go. I'm going to ask Pops to bring him in. It's the holiday season, and we have a word from the North Pole.
Santa.
It's Santa.
And Santa's microphone is not on.
Oh, Santa's technologically challenged.
He is. Do we need to send a teenager over there to do some IT for you?
The unfortunate thing is you should start panicking now, kids, because the naughty or nice list is online, and he's totally teched it up.
Santa can't work his microphone.
Those dang elves.
Oh, and he's gone.
Those dang elves, they just don't get it.
He's real.
They make stuff with hammers and screwdrivers and wood. They don't get technology.
Look, Santa's real, but he's a man of mystery.
Santa's back.
There he is.
Santa, are you back? You have no volume control.
It's those evil hoes.
Nothing for you. Maybe you should be a dentist.
That was a deep cut. I like that.
We did get a comment from Roland Mann in the comment section who says, where is it? He says it's a long-time listener, first-time caller, listening on the road in the middle of
Is that working now?
Oh,
hey, Santa.
Welcome, Santa. How technologically challenged?
Oh, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Are you going to give collectible coins this year for Christmas?
Of course I am. That's what every good boy and girl should get this year.
That's awesome. So this is Santa is my friend Dave Olbrich. We're partners. Well, not really partners. He's the host and creator of Geek View Tavern, and I'm just his sometime co-host and left-hand idiot.
Well, at least so far we haven't done a show without you. So at least so far you're the permanent co-host. But okay.
You try and stop me.
And I've known Mr. Cleary for what? 38 years, 39 years? It's been a long time, my friend.
I think it's 40 now, technically.
Yeah,
I don't know. That could be close.
It is a long time since you've been to the North Pole, my friend.
You haven't changed a bit.
So
See,
Dave
on the
looks
good or the naughty or nice list is the question.
This hat and this beard is freaking me out a little bit, I have to say.
You look good. You look good.
You can't go within 100 yards of an elementary school, though.
I hate that this is a virtual thing because I have this unwavering desire to sit on your lap right now, Joe.
Oh,
a little person once asked me he goes, do you go out? Because I do that. I was like, are you saying that we should go out as a team and do parties?
Yes.
Hey, look at the fat guy with the white beard. Let's go do parties together.
That's how you grow an audience. You
That's right. Go door to door.
So, Dave, you need to say hello to Thomas Flormonte Jr., who's worked for us at Malibu Comics.
I remember Thomas very well.
All right, and also I don't believe you know Mike Belcher, who has his own.
Hi, Santa. Oh, hi, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
So, so that's that pretty much wraps it up.
That's the show.
What do you do for a holiday party?
Silverline.
Thank God. So so next week I'm still going to be here. Nobody's gotten rid of me yet, so I got to do a second week. My guests next week are Jeff Vaughn, who's going to talk about Al Capone vampire. Mark
He's
Haynes,
one of my clients too.
Yes, he is. Mark Haynes, who has a podcast, action audio drama called Hindsight with John Goodman and one of the actors from Star Trek Picard. Sean McLaughlin.
I really look forward to seeing John.
I feel like Mark is going to be a future client.
Yeah, I think so too. Because his podcast is really good. It's a mystery story about Houdini.
Yeah, it's supposed to be great.
Oh, there you go.
Sean McLaughlin, who's a former Warner Brothers producer, of
Also a
animation,
client.
and creator, writer, director of the short film Last Night of the Twilight. So all those guys are sort of do-it-yourselfers, so they're going to be coming in and talking to us. And before we go, I have a final quote from Fred Allen, who is old enough that only Kevin Cleary and I would remember him.
I love Fred Allen.
He said, "You can take all the sincerity in Hollywood, place it in the navel of a fruit fly, and still have room enough for 3 caraway seeds in a producer's heart."
There you go.
And that's the end of our Hollywood show, everybody. Don't forget to check your Diamond catalog for the order for Trump's #1. And as we say in the Silverline universe,
make mine Silverline.
Oh, I just spilled coffee.
Thank you for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Kevin, thank
That's
you.
good having you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Holidays, all those in Silverland.
So Pops is going to take us out.
Pops is just going to let us hang.
We're going back to.
Just wanted to give you all a heads up that right now you can add the Madness Network to your Roku account right there by Roku.com account. Add Prom 2. Check out our preview. We got 10 of our highlighted shows up there for you to check out. Some of our best stuff from the last 4 years. Look, it's hard to pick 10 out of 2,600 videos, but we did it. And check it out. The campaign is launching soon, so be there. Peace.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios and Make Mine Silverline.